As promised, we are talking all things George Pickens on today's Cowboys Report. We'll run through where things sit, the trade ideas. They're not even rumors. They're just ideas on George Pickens. What a contract extension could look like if the Cowboys can even find a way to do it now. All of that coming up on today's show with what I think is a fairly measured, even take on everything going on with George Pickens, where I'm not even actually upset with how the Cowboys have handled things so far. If you have friends who have questions, ideas, thoughts on the George Pickens side, I think this is a good, pretty comprehensive overview. So help us out by sharing today's video on social media, Twitter, Facebook, text it, whatever. Shares help us out quite a bit, so thank you. Let's begin with the Pickens trade idea stuff here. So this really got going originally on 105 Through the Fan. Brian brought us Zach Wolchuk, part of a question from a fan in their post-game show. So it wasn't like they created the idea out of nowhere. A lot of negative pushback on that. Broadus tweeted out this Monday, if my dates are correct in my head. It says, if you don't have the plan on re-signing or tagging him, your team is not going anywhere, there is serious value. I am being sincere here. Thanks for listening. If you don't have that plan, Brian's right. I don't know why you wouldn't have that plan, but we'll come back to it here more in depth. And then it kind of really got jump-started even more with Sherian Williams. I actually don't know how to pronounce her first name. Longtime beat writer around the NFL and the Cowboys, but I've only seen it written. Says the next couple of weeks will determine whether they could be buyers or sellers, but trading George Pickens makes a ton of sense in what is looking like a necessary rebuild of the defense to compete. I don't think that trading George Pickens to fix your defense is actually a very good idea unless you get blown away by some wild trade offer. That is the definition of robbing Peter to pay Paul. Hey, let's take the thing that's working, let's tear it apart a little bit to try to fix something else. That doesn't actually make a lot of logical sense. Look, I know I am down a third-round pick in 2026. I know this defense needs help. We all do it. We all have eyeballs. I've got 2 first-round picks the next 2 years, and I have a tremendous amount of salary cap space to make this happen. You might see numbers get thrown out there of oh, the Cowboys have $2 million, $4 million. They're negative in cap space. Not really. Let me break it down for you. And feel free to screenshot this and send it to friends, because this is the math on it. Restructuring Dak, almost $31 million. Restructuring Lamb, 19. Restructuring Osa, 12. Restructuring Tyler Smith, 17 and change. Deron Bland, 8 and change. Jake Ferguson, almost 5. Cut Terrence Steele, 8 or 14-ish million dollars. Cut Trayvon Diggs, 12.5-ish million dollars. Extend or cut or do something with Kenny Clark, anywhere from $9 to $21 million. Cut Malik Hooker, $7 million. Look, math is hard, it's dumb, and it's stupid, but that takes you from the current projection of around $2.8 million with your rollover to upwards of $125 million. Look, you have to fix this Cowboys defense. We all know this defense is bad right now. That is what the cap space and the draft picks you have is for. That's what that is there for. Use it in the offseason to do it. I got all this money, all these draft picks. I can get more draft picks by trading down. I don't need to take apart what is a top 5 unit to try to fix apart. I've got other assets to go do that. So would you consider a George Pickens trade? I'm sure most people are going to vote no. The exception is if someone gets wild and, Tennessee calls and says, hey, we'll give you a first-round pick. You actually probably say yes because that could be a top 5 pick. But, that's realistically, why for yes and for no? More likely, far more likely here, the Cowboys have these options upcoming this offseason with George Pickens. Contract extension, which you can do now, which we'll talk about. A franchise tag, just letting him walk in free agency, which is the stupidest option possible, at least as we sit right now, rest of the year to play out. Or you tag and trade him, which you could do in the offseason if you want to. The Cowboys' plan when they made the trade for George Pickens was both sides wanted a wait-and-see approach. Dallas wanted to see, okay, how does he play? How does he mesh with this offense? How does he fit with Dak? Is he going to have the crash-out moments, the diva tendencies? How does he act? So far, so good. Pickens' camp wanted him to try to break out. The best quarterback he's ever played with by, frankly, a massive margin. How does he fare this upcoming season? He's having the breakout. I am not upset at all with the Cowboys' handling here. Cowboys often say it takes two to make a deal happen. This actually is an it takes two situation. Now, the Cowboys can find a way to get that deal done right now if they really, really wanted to, but it makes decent amount of sense for all parties to kind of let this one play out a little bit. That's not a bad thing. I'm not blaming the Cowboys for that either. It's David Mulcahy, and he knows what he's doing. So coming up next, we'll break down what a deal might end up looking like, which I think would be more inclined to get done after the year than right now. Before that, today's show is made possible by Omaha Steaks. From everyday dinners and effortless entertaining to unforgettable gifts, Omaha Steaks delivers the world's best steak experience. And you guys get an extra 50% off site-wide, an extra 20% off select favorites at omahasteaks.com, and an extra $35 off with promo code Cowboys at checkout. Omaha Steaks offers unrivaled quality and variety. Every bite is backed by their 100% guarantee. That extra $35 off your order can take down the classic favorites assortment, as you see on screen, to under $100. You guys have seen the prices of meat at these stores these days. You save a ton of money by using promo code Cowboys at omahasteaks.com. They are America's original butcher since 1917, family-owned with over 100 years of expertise in the meat industry. It's not just steaks. They also carry burgers, chicken, pork, seafood, and even desserts. So save big with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their early Black Friday sale. And for an extra $35 off, use promo code Cowboys at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. That's an extra 50% off and $35 extra off by using promo code Cowboys at checkout. Let's run through what the deal will look like. And we have a lot of information on how to inform this. Previous deals and the franchise tag, which was the minimum of what the Cowboys should do. The current projected franchise tag cost, that can ebb and flow by a little bit, is $28 million per over the cap, right in that ballpark. A second franchise tag cost would then jump that figure to $36 million and change if you had to do the two-tag situation for George Pickens. And the way NFL agents operate, that is your minimum guaranteed money. Now, sometimes they take less. T. Higgins is the example there, but that was the issue. He took less than 2 years of tags guaranteed, and that's why he moved on from David Mulcahy, who is repping George Pickens along with another agent over at Athletes First. At minimum, if I were Pickens' agent, and I guarantee you his agent right now, they're not going to settle for less than $28 million per year and $67 million guaranteed. Because even if they don't get that right now from the Cowboys, well, they're going to get it on the tag, or if they don't get tagged somehow, then they're a free agent. And the free agent market is wonky and weird, and the Patriots and all these teams have cap space and desperation. It could get a little bit crazy. That's why they're not going to take the team-friendly deal necessarily right this second. So do you want to pay George Pickens? 1 for yes, 0 for no. Let me know in the comment section of today's show. I think the stuff we've seen from GP3 so far has been everything we could have asked for, frankly. He has been awesome. He has played at an incredibly high level. His on-pace numbers are ridiculous. He stepped up in the absence of CeeDee Lamb. I have seen other teams have dynamic success with a top-paid quarterback and 2 top-paid wide receivers. Like, you have to really convince me that it makes sense to be like, yeah, these guys make a top 5 high-powered offense, but we shouldn't keep them together. Like, that's not, what's the old saying? A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. It's kind of what you got right now with Pickens, right? Highest paid wide receivers per year. There are 10 guys above the $30 million threshold. If, by some miracle, Pickens hit the open market, I think he'd be asking to get in that $30 million figure range, and I think he'd make it as well. Now, another good comparison are the wide receiver 2 contracts, guys that are not the number 1 for their team. T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, Jamison Williams, Devonta Smith all stand out, signing extensions in the past. Devonta Smith was several years ago. T. Higgins was pretty recently. Guys that on a different team probably would be the number 1. But they're the number 2 on their current team, just like it is with Pickens and Dallas. Guaranteed money matters a lot here. And we mentioned that high guaranteed figure for George Pickens of, getting to at least $67 million per year minimum. That's not quite top 10, But it is actually pretty high among those wide receiver twos we just mentioned. Again, T. Higgins is the outlier because it's the Bengals and they don't handle their money properly, and he dumped athletes first to stay in Cincinnati and cost himself money in the long run. I don't think that's what Pickens is trying to do, which is fine. It's what do you want to do? No complaints about it. Waddle and Devonta Smith. Waddle had a very high ratio of guaranteed money. It was only a 3-year deal. Looking at the way the contracts work out among wide receivers too, adjusting for an ever-rising salary cap, this is my guess at a rough over-under. You're going to beat the average per year by a little bit more than the $28 million figure. You're going to have to bump up the guaranteed money as a result. This puts him in the top 10 for now among wide receivers, and then in a year he's not in the top 10 anymore because that's how the receiver market always ends up working. I think that's like a rough ballpark of like, this is probably reasonable, especially if you wanted to do it now. But we know how the Cowboys operate, and that's another part of the conversation we'll get to here. So what is the most you'd pay George Pickens per year? Let me know in the comment section of today's show. I think the Cowboys' plan is to at least franchise tag George Pickens this upcoming offseason. That's why they made some of the moves they did. They paid Tyler Smith. They moved on from Micah, which not necessarily correlated, but whatever. They paid DeRon Bland. They've allowed themselves to have the franchise tag as an option and not do the stupid thing they did several years ago where they had to franchise tag Dak Pickens, let Amari Cooper hit the open market, and nearly lost him. They've set themselves up to have that in their back pocket, even though in general I don't like using the franchise tag. It limits your flexibility. But again, you got plenty of money. Jerry Jones had this to say, by the way. The point is we'll look carefully at what we're doing financially, carefully at what we do there with George. Can't tell you how proud I am personally for him because he is absolutely as exciting as he's been on the field for us. We should know how this story plays out. Like I think the most likely outcome here is the Cowboys complain about having only so much pie. They franchise tag George Pickens. Limits a little bit of their spending in the offseason and free agency. They get the deal done at training camp or around then, and they sit up there and say, well, we didn't pay 11 so we could pay George Pickens. Even though you actually do have the money available to pay him. It's not actually that complicated from a monetary perspective, especially with what you're paying Kenny Clark next year, but I digress. The money isn't an issue. It's not. They've got plenty of money. How the Cowboys handle a big contract of this type could be. We've seen that play out time and time again. Right now, I don't blame them at all. I think this is the most likely reasonable way it's played out so far where they haven't gotten a deal done because neither side wanted to. Pickens wants to boost his value. Cowboys want to see how it plays out. That's fine. Have they learned their lessons? A smart team, if they view Pickens as a long-term piece, which so far the answer is yes. We'll see how the rest of the year plays out, sure, but so far, obviously, yes. They get that deal done before free agency begins. So will they? We'll find out. We will have year-round coverage for you on the Cowboys Report. Hit that sub button, youtube.com/CowboysTV. One very quick, don't give me this, I want to mention. I have seen several people out there, even media out there, say, well, you can't justify paying a top quarterback and 2 top wide receivers. That's not good roster building. Guys, the Eagles literally won a Super Bowl doing that. Last year, they paid Jalen Hurts top of the market money. They paid A.J. Brown. They paid Devonta Smith. The difference is they were early on those deals. The Cowboys were not early on Dak or Lamb, frankly, and I guess they can't really be early on Pickens on time if they pay him before free agency. And they did the right moves with their other assets. There's a lot of different ways you can successfully build, even just a playoff contender. But you have to maximize your other assets. So all that other cap space, all those draft picks, got to use it right on the defense, or else, we're kind of stuck where we are right now.